Now that we've had a chance to look at the API documentation, we're ready to start interacting with SAP 2000. The first thing we should do is to use the SAP 2000 API to launch a new SAP 2000 application. So, let's get started. First, we'll create and save a new worksheet as instance handling. Remember to save it as a .xlsm to save any changes we make to our macros and code. Next, we'll add a control to easily run our macro code. Controls are a set of objects that are made available to us through the Developer tab, and they provide added user-focused functionalities to our worksheets. They vary quite a bit in their uses and properties, and we'll explore them a fair bit in a short while, but for now, let's add a simple button. Let's go to the Developer tab, then we'll click Insert. Here we'll find a list of controls. There are form controls and ActiveX controls. Form controls are a more simplified version of the controls, while ActiveX controls offer more interactions and integrations with VBA code. ActiveX controls also add an additional layer of visual customization as well as event handling capabilities over the standard form controls. For now, let's add a button form control. We won't need the added ActiveX functionalities for a bit. We'll drag a box to draw the button. And now that we've created the button, this window pops up asking us to assign a macro to our button. This means that when we click it, the assigned macro will automatically be run. If you want, you can skip this step and not assign a macro at this moment, but let's add one right now because it just makes it easier. Let's name our macro Launch New Instance. Now let's also change the text of our button to Launch New SAP 2000 Instance just to make it clear what our button does. Then, let's look at our code. As you can see, Excel automatically created a new standard code module called Module 1. And here we'll find the macro declaration with the name we gave it. Before going any further, we first need to make sure our code recognizes the API functions and procedures that we're about to call. To do this, it's really simple. We just need to go to Tools in our upper ribbon menu. Then click References. Now, assuming everything went well with the SAP 2000 installation, we need to scroll down to find and click the checkbox that says SAP 2000 Application Programming Interface. Let's select it and then click OK. Again, if you can't find this in your References menu, it's possible some error might have happened during your SAP 2000 installation, and you may need to reinstall it or contact CSI support. Let's go back to our macro code. First, let's declare some variables. For this, we'll use the dim keyword. The dim keyword is used to declare any variable that we want to store a value. The first variable will be the API helper object. We'll give it the name myHelper and declare it as a CHelper class object. Let's assign the new helper object with the set keyword. The set keyword is used when we want to assign a value to an object variable in VBA. And we'll say we want to create a new object of the helper type. Let's also create a commented line by inserting an apostrophe character. Commented lines are lines where we can put anything we want and are generally used to provide context to the code when it is needed. The code compiler will ignore this line, and no compilation errors will be generated from it. There are various conventions when it comes to code commenting, with some developers advocating for minimal code comments as they believe the code itself should be simple enough to be read almost as a natural language. This obviously depends on how readable the programming language we're working with is, as the syntax of some languages can be quite dense. On the other hand, a lot of developers advise heavily commenting on the code and following the comments instead of the code to gain understanding of it. This also has a downside of making the code longer and more extensive. However, due to the nature of this course, we'll be employing this method for the sake of making very detailed and well-explained code. Now, we'll need to assign a value to our SAP 2000 object. Just a quick reminder. Objects are a special type of variable that represents a complex data type with its own functions, procedures, and properties. In this case, a SAP 2000 object, which is a CO API, is an object that is an instance of that CO API class, and it contains all the information and functions of a SAP 2000 program. Next, we'll need a SAP 2000 object to manage our SAP 2000 program. We'll declare it as a CO API type. Then, let's assign our SAP2000 object. We'll use our helper object, then add a dot so that we indicate that we're using a function or property of it. Let's select the CreateObjectProgID function and open brackets to input the following string. CSI, SAP2000, API, SAP object. This is the API ID of SAP2000. Alternatively, we could also input the file path to the SAP2000 executable. Now that we have our SAP2000 object, we're going to launch the SAP2000 program. To do that, we'll use our SAP2000 object and put a dot in front of it. Next, we'll select the ApplicationStart function. Then, just for completion's sake, we'll tap the spacebar and then the Control key plus the spacebar. The Control plus spacebar hotkey opens up the context menu and can give us extremely helpful tips on what to input next, so, naturally, we'll be making heavy use of it going forward. In this case, it suggests several values from an enumeration, which is what the ApplicationStart function is expecting. This enumeration, in particular, is listing the units that the application is supposed to start with. In this case, force, length, and temperature. We'll go with the kilonewtons, meters, and Celsius option for now, and we'll be using these by default throughout the course. Finally, let's add a confirmation message just to let us know that everything went okay. Let's show a message box by typing MSG box, and we'll add the message new SAP2000 instance launched. When the code is done, after the SAP2000 program has been launched, Excel will now show us a message box confirming that it is done. Let's test it out. We could either press that play button on the top menu, but let's test out our button instead. Let's go back to our worksheet and simply press the button. It might take a bit to show us the message, but that's normal since it's just the program taking its time to set everything up. And there we have it. We've successfully launched a SAP2000 instance from Excel alone. Now we're ready to get started.